When a name becomes forbidden, it is not erased because it is weak. It is removed because it carries weight that cannot be controlled. In elite systems, silence is never accidental. Silence is a tool used when language fails to contain consequence. The phrase, "your name became forbidden to speak," does not describe censorship in a literal sense. It describes a threshold crossed, where mentioning you creates instability the system cannot afford. Power speaks through repetition. What it cannot repeat safely, it avoids. Names are repeated to normalize, to frame, to domesticate. When a name resists framing, when it introduces questions instead of answers, it becomes inefficient. Inefficiency is intolerable in elite environment. So the name is removed from conversation, not out of fear, but out of risk management. Silence is cheaper than control. You are not forbidden because you threaten authority directly. Direct threats are easy to manage. You are forbidden because your presence exposes structural contradictions. Mentioning you forces comparison. Comparison reveals imbalance. Imbalance demands correction. Correction costs capital. Social, political, psychological. The system chooses silence because silence preserves the illusion of coherence. This is how elite circles actually operate. They do not ban what they can dominate. They do not erase what they can absorb. They silence what cannot be integrated without loss. Your name represents something that does not align with existing narratives of success, loyalty, or hierarchy. It introduces an alternate reference point, one that cannot be negotiated into compliance. You may never hear that your name is avoided. You are not meant to. Forbidden names are not discussed publicly. They are signaled through omission. Invitations stop. References disappear. Conversations redirect. This is not exile. It is containment through absence. The system does not confront you because confrontation would acknowledge relevance. Instead, it pretends you are not part of the equation. This is where many misunderstand silence as defeat. It is the opposite. Silence is used only when engagement would amplify. Your name carries amplification without consent. It spreads without promotion. It lingers without endorsement. That is dangerous to any structure built on controlled influence. So the safest option becomes non-mention. Notice what this implies. Your impact does not rely on visibility. Visibility can be managed. Your impact relies on memory without narrative. People remember encounters with you, not stories about you. Memory without narrative cannot be corrected or spun. It remains raw, unresolved, and therefore disruptive. Elites prefer resolved stories. Unresolved memory is volatile. You may feel the effects of this as a strange absence. Not rejection, but avoidance without explanation. Doors do not slam. They simply stop opening. Questions are never asked. Curiosity is redirected elsewhere. This is not punishment. It is acknowledgement that proximity to you introduces variables the system cannot model. Your name becomes forbidden because it cannot be used as leverage. Names are tools. Titles are tools. Reputations are tools. Yours refuses to function as one. It does not promise alignment. It does not guarantee loyalty. It does not signal predictability. Without predictability, power cannot operate efficiently. This silence does not isolate you. It frees you from narrative pressure. You are no longer discussed, debated, or positioned. You are removed from the language of influence entirely. What remains is your movement, untracked, unquoted, uncontained. That is more destabilizing than opposition. The first layer clarifies the mechanism. Your name is not forbidden because it is dangerous to say, but because saying it changes the room in ways elites cannot afford. Silence, in this case, is not erasure. It is confirmation. Once a name is removed from elite language, a secondary effect follows. Orientation changes. Rooms reorganize themselves without ever acknowledging why. Decisions begin earlier. Conversations shorten. Certain risks are no longer entertained. This happens because silence does not erase influence. It redistributes it. What cannot be spoken becomes background gravity, unseen but shaping movement. Elite circles depend on shared reference points. Names function as coordinate. They tell people how to align, who to follow, what to expect. When your name stops being used, it is because it no longer serves as a coordinate. It does not anchor behavior. It destabilizes it. Without a stable anchor, elites choose omission. Omission keeps the map intact. You may notice that this silence is disciplined. It is not gossip silence. It is not fear silence. It is procedural silence. People know not to ask. They sense when a topic is inefficient. The avoidance spreads without instruction. That spread is how power protects itself from concepts it cannot metabolize. The rule is never written. Writing would acknowledge existence. The rule lives as instinct. This is also why your name becomes dangerous in private, not public. Public spaces thrive on spectacle. They can tolerate controversy. Private spaces thrive on control. They cannot tolerate ambiguity. Mentioning you introduces ambiguity that cannot be resolved through hierarchy or consensus. Once ambiguity enters, authority loses tempo. Tempo loss is unacceptable at the top. You are not forbidden because of what you say. You are forbidden because of what happens when others say your name. Their posture shifts. Their certainty thins. Their confidence becomes performative. Even those who disagree with you feel the need to justify themselves when you are mentioned. Justification exposes weakness. Silence avoids exposure. This is why elites do not argue against you. Arguments grant legitimacy. Rebuttal implies relevance. They choose the only option that preserves the structure: non-mention. Non-mention does not defeat an idea. It quarantines it. Quarantine is used only when something cannot be disproven but also cannot be allowed to circulate freely. You may sense this as a peculiar asymmetry. You are not attacked. You are not praised. You are simply absent from the language of influence. Absence at this level is intentional. It signals that engagement would amplify what silence contains. Your name becomes a trigger the system learns to avoid. There is also a personal cost to this. Silence removes mirrors. Without mirrors, identity can drift. Many collapse here, mistaking omission for irrelevance. You do not. You understand that relevance to power is not the same as relevance to reality. Power manages narratives. Reality moves regardless of them. You align with movement, not narration. The silence also protects you from being simplified. Names, once circulated, are reduced to symbols. Symbols are flattened. Flattening makes people predictable. By removing your name from circulation, the system unintentionally preserves your complexity. You are not turned into an example, a warning, or a case study. You remain unclassified. Unclassified elements are the most difficult to neutralize. Neutralization requires categorization. Categorization requires language. Language has been withdrawn. This leaves only distance. Distance is safer than control when control would fail. The system chooses safety for itself. This second layer reveals a deeper truth. Your name is not forbidden because it threatens order, but because it refuses to participate in it. Silence is how power steps aside without admitting it has done so. When a name becomes forbidden, power does not merely avoid it. It begins to restructure behavior around its absence. This is the phase where silence becomes active. Not passive omission, but deliberate architectural adjustment. Meetings change tone. Decisions are framed more narrowly. Risk tolerance shrinks. Not because you are present, but because the memory of your presence cannot be erased. Memory without language is the most destabilizing form of influence. Elite systems depend on verbal consensus. What is spoken can be agreed upon, challenged, or dismissed. What is unspoken cannot be processed through those mechanisms. Your name now exists in that unprocessable space. It surfaces as hesitation, as overcorrection, as excessive caution. People do not say why they are careful. They simply become careful. That caution is not weakness, it is self-preservation. You may notice that this avoidance produces contradictions. Elites value confidence, yet they avoid the one reference that would test it. They claim openness, yet they quietly restrict vocabulary. This contradiction does not bother them. Power tolerates hypocrisy as long as control remains intact. What it cannot tolerate is unmanaged resonance, a name that activates reflection without permission. This is why your name does not become a rumor. Rumors spread because they can be shaped. Your name resists shaping. It does not settle into story. Every attempt to summarize it feels incomplete. Incomplete summaries create anxiety. Anxiety disrupts efficiency. Efficiency is the true currency of elite circles. Anything that reduces it is cut from circulation. You may also observe that the silence is uneven. Some people know, some sense, some pretend not to notice. This unevenness is intentional. Uniform silence would look like policy. Policy invites scrutiny. Instead, the system allows informal alignment to do the work. Informal alignment is faster and harder to trace. It leaves no record. That is how power prefers to operate. This phase can feel isolating if misread. You might feel as though you have been excluded from something important. In reality, you have been excluded from narrative management. That exclusion is a form of freedom. Narratives demand maintenance. Maintenance demands compromise. By being left out, you are spared the erosion that comes with constant positioning. Your influence now operates laterally. People adjust without citing cause. Outcomes change without attribution. You are no longer an actor in the story. You are a constraint on how the story can be told. Constraints shape outcomes more reliably than protagonists ever do. Protagonists invite challenge. Constraints invite adaptation. This is also where your own discipline matters most. Silence can tempt reaction. Reaction would reinsert you into language. Language would allow the system to frame you again. You resist that pull. You do not force mention. You do not correct omission. You let the silence do its work. Silence, when chosen by power, is fragile. It breaks if pressured. You keep it intact by remaining uninterested in being named. The third layer clarifies a subtle mechanism. Your name is forbidden not to erase you, but to protect the system from the consequences of acknowledging you. As long as the silence holds, the system avoids facing its own contradictions. And as long as you do not demand recognition, you remain outside its corrective reach. Blessed by His grace? Click Super Thank You and give $20 to spread His light. Your gift plants seeds that grow His kingdom. Be the blessing. As silence stabilizes, it begins to function as a boundary rather than an absence. Your name is no longer simply avoided. It becomes a line no one crosses casually. This is the stage where omission turns into discipline. People learn, without being told, that certain conversations lose coherence the moment you are introduced. They adjust before that moment arrives. The system refines itself around what it cannot say. Elite environments survive on calibration. Every word is weighed for effect, timing, and downstream consequence. When your name enters that calculus, it consistently produces an unacceptable result. It widens perspective beyond control. It invites questions that do not resolve into loyalty or dissent. It fractures the neat binaries power depends on. So the name is excluded not emotionally, but procedurally. as a risk factor that cannot be mitigated. You may notice how this changes the quality of discourse around you. Language becomes more cautious, more abstract, more indirect. People speak in generalities where specifics once existed. They reference certain situations, unusual variables, outliers. These euphemisms are not accidental. They are placeholders where your name would have been too disruptive to insert. The system learns to speak around you. This is where forbidden names acquire their true force. They become negative space, felt through avoidance rather than presence. Negative space shapes perception more strongly than objects ever could. It guides attention without demanding it. You influence the map by what is left blank. Blank spaces make navigators slow down. Slowness reduces error. Error reduction is why elites tolerate silence at all. There is also a subtle hierarchy inversion here. Those who know why the name is avoided do not explain it to those who do not. Explanation would spread instability. Knowledge becomes implicit rather than explicit. This creates layers of awareness that are never articulated. You exist simultaneously as known, half-known, and unacknowledged. That multiplicity prevents any single narrative from forming. You may feel the weight of this as a kind of social gravity. Not attraction, but deflection. Attention bends away from you. Influence flows around you. This is not marginalization. It is containment without enclosure. You are not boxed in. You are left unboxed, precisely because boxing would require definition. Definition would fail. The system's silence also protects its own legitimacy. Admitting that a name cannot be spoken would reveal limit. Power rarely admits limits aloud. It prefers to encode them into behavior. Behavior is harder to challenge than statements. You read behavior. You understand that when rooms grow quieter at certain thresholds, something real has been encountered. Your own role in this phase is restraint. You do not test the boundary. Testing would turn silence into spectacle. Spectacle would force response. Response would reintroduce narrative control. You let the silence remain untested. Untested boundaries last longer. They become assumed. Assumptions are the deepest layer of power. This is also why attempts to reinsert your name often come from the margins, not the center. Peripheral actors seek relevance through disruption. Central actors seek stability through omission. When someone at the edge speaks your name, it is quickly absorbed, redirected, or ignored. The center does not react. Reaction would acknowledge. It simply continues without adjustment. The fourth layer reveals a critical insight. Your name is forbidden not because it threatens collapse, but because it prevents consolidation. Consolidation is how elites maintain dominance. Anything that keeps meaning fluid must be kept silent. You're not here by chance. Feel the pull? Tap join to unlock truth, purpose, and a tribe that gets it. This is more than a membership, it's your calling. And so the silence hardens, not into fear, but into habit. Once silence becomes habit, it no longer feels enforced. It feels natural, as if the name simply does not belong in certain spaces. This is the most durable form of exclusion because it does not require agreement. No one needs to decide. The decision has already dissolved into custom. Custom outlasts policy. Policy can be overturned. Custom persists without authorship. At this stage, the system stops remembering why your name is avoided. It only remembers the effect. The effect is hesitation. The effect is disruption of rhythm. The effect is a momentary loss of certainty that no one wishes to account for. When effects repeat without explanation, behavior adapts automatically. That adaptation is what you are witnessing now. Elite circles are especially sensitive to rhythm. Timing, confidence, and momentum are their currencies. Anything that interrupts rhythm without offering replacement is treated as friction. Your name introduces friction without offering alignment. It does not point toward consensus or opposition. It opens a third space, one where existing frameworks feel insufficient. That space cannot be occupied without risk, so it is left empty. You may notice that people who once spoke freely around you now choose their words carefully, even when your name is not involved. Silence spreads outward. It trains caution. This is not intimidation. It is calibration. They are adjusting to a presence that cannot be simplified. Simplification is how power maintains speed. Without it, movement slows. Slowness exposes weakness. Weakness is costly. This is also where misunderstanding deepens. From the outside, the absence of your name can look like irrelevance. From the inside, it is understood as containment through omission. Those who mistake omission for insignificance attempt to fill the gap. Their attempts fail quickly. The gap is not empty because of neglect. It is empty because it cannot be filled safely. Your own experience of this phase may feel strangely quiet. Fewer confrontations, fewer invitations, fewer explanations demanded of you. This quiet is not peace in the emotional sense. It is clearance. You have been cleared from the machinery of influence. Machines cannot operate without input. You no longer provide any that are usable. What remains is movement without annotation. You act, but your actions are not discussed. You speak, but your words are not circulated. This is not censorship. Censorship reacts. This is preemptive avoidance. Avoidance signals that reaction would create more instability than silence. Silence wins by default. You may sense an urge to correct this, to reassert presence, to force naming. That urge is understandable. Naming feels like existence, but existence does not depend on language. Power depends on language. By refusing to seek naming, you deny power its primary tool. You let reality operate without narration. The fifth layer clarifies something essential. Your name has become forbidden not because it must be hidden, but because it cannot be used. It cannot be used to threaten. It cannot be used to inspire loyalty. It cannot be used to frame dissent. Without use, language retreats. Without language, control weakens. And so the silence continues, not as suppression, but as the system's most efficient response. When silence reaches this depth, it begins to protect itself. No one needs to enforce it, because breaking it produces immediate discomfort. The moment your name is spoken in the wrong room, the air changes. Not dramatically, subtly. Focus fractures. Authority thins. People glance away, not at each other, but at their own calculations. This reaction trains restraint faster than any rule ever could. At this stage, silence is no longer about you. It is about maintaining internal stability within elite systems. Your name has become associated with unpredictability of outcome, not because you are erratic, but because you are uncontrollable without conflict. Conflict costs too much. It exposes seams. It slows momentum. Silence is cheaper, cleaner, and far more effective. You may notice that those who understand this never explain it. Explanation would create trace. Trace creates record. Record invites inquiry. Inquiry invites accountability. Accountability destabilizes informal power. So the knowledge remains tacit, passed only through behavior. People learn by watching reactions, not by hearing reasons. This is how elite norms survive scrutiny. This phase also clarifies why silence does not equal erasure. Erasure requires force. Silence requires consensus. Consensus emerges only when enough actors independently reach the same conclusion. Mentioning this name is inefficient. Efficiency, not fear, governs the choice. Fear panics. Efficiency calculates. The calculation always ends the same way, avoidance. You might sense that this avoidance produces a peculiar form of respect. Not admiration, not allegiance, but acknowledgement without engagement. You are not dismissed. You are worked around. Structures adjust their language, timing, and framing so that you never need to be addressed directly. Direct address would require positioning. Positioning would invite comparison. Comparison would reopen uncertainty. Your own posture becomes critical here. If you seek acknowledgement, the silence will crack. Cracks invite repair. Repair invites intervention. Intervention invites narrative. You do not invite any of that. You move without insisting on recognition. You let the system maintain its distance. Distance, in this case, preserves your autonomy. You may also notice that attempts to weaponize your name come only from those without access to consequence. Outsiders speculate. Insiders remain quiet. This contrast reveals where power actually resides. Power does not shout. It manages risk. Your name has become a risk factor that cannot be mitigated. Mitigation fails because your effect is not symbolic. It is structural. This is where the silence becomes self-sustaining. New members entering elite spaces sense the boundary without being told. They feel the tension when approaching it and redirect instinctively. The rule reproduces itself without instruction. This is the strongest form of control and the strongest form of avoidance. The sixth layer reveals the final mechanism before completion. Your name is no longer avoided consciously, but excluded instinctively. Instinct is faster than policy. Habit is stronger than fear. And silence, once internalized, no longer needs a reason. When a name becomes instinctively excluded, the process is complete. There is no longer a rule, a memory, or a decision attached to the silence. It has become environmental. The room simply does not allow the word to surface. Not because anyone stops it, but because nothing supports it. Language, like fire, needs oxygen. Your name has been deprived of that atmosphere in elite spaces. At this final stage, power no longer perceives you as a variable. Variables require monitoring. Monitoring requires attention. Attention is reserved for elements that can still be influenced. You cannot. So attention withdraws. Withdrawal is not defeat. It is resolution. The system resolves you by placing you outside its linguistic perimeter. What lies outside cannot be managed, only avoided. You may notice that this silence creates an unusual clarity for you. Without being named, you are no longer pulled into definitions you did not choose. You are not framed as ally, threat, asset, or liability. Those frames belong to systems that trade in leverage. You are no longer tradable. And what cannot be traded does not circulate. This is why the silence does not feel hostile. Hostility would indicate unfinished business. There is none. The system has concluded its assessment and moved on. That movement is quiet because acknowledging limits publicly would weaken authority. Power never announces what it cannot handle. It simply redirects. You might also realize that this condition protects you from becoming symbolic. Symbols are useful. Useful things are consumed. By remaining unnamed, you remain unconsumable. You are spared myth, distortion, and appropriation. Your actions remain yours. Your meaning remains intact because it is never flattened into story. There is a subtle freedom here that only appears when language falls away. You are no longer discussed, anticipated, or positioned. You move without echo. That does not make you invisible. It makes you undisturbed. Undisturbed movement is rare. It allows precision. Precision allows continuity. You may feel no urge to break the silence. Breaking it would invite response. Response would invite framing. Framing would pull you back into the very structures that chose avoidance. You understand now that silence is not something done to you. It is something maintained around you because doing otherwise would cost too much. This is the final inversion. Being unnamed is not loss of status, it is loss of access to you. Elite circles lose the ability to define you, reference you, or use you as context. That loss is irreversible unless you invite re-entry. You do not. You continue without insisting on presence. Presence insisted upon becomes negotiable. Presence unannounced remains sovereign. Nothing dramatic marks this ending. There is no confrontation, no acknowledgement, no reveal. The absence itself is the signal. The silence holds because it works, and because it works, it remains. Your name does not return. It does not need to. What you are continues without language, outside rooms that require words to survive.